Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Welcome back to Elevate. This is Tyler Chesser, and I'm really thankful to have you here. And I want to welcome Elevate Nation back because we've got a phenomenal show today, and we've got a great friend and a great leader in this space and beyond, such a dynamic person. And really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is we are identifying and applying how the best of the best raise the bar professionally and personally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And we say beyond because real estate is a vehicle that can really lead you to abundance financially as well as, with your time. And this is a masterclass. At the end of the day, this is for leaders and those who are looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes in real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. So I want to welcome Evan Holladay, who is our guest today. And Evan, thank you so much for being here.
Dude, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm loving life and closing deals.
I love it, man. Well, let me tell the listeners a little bit about you, and we'll dive into a lot of that. And I'm grateful to have you here. Evan and I have been friends for a few years, but I'll tell you a little bit about him just from a high level here. Evan is a real estate investor and developer with over $176 million and over 1,000 units of multifamily real estate developed. Evan and his team specialize in creating workforce and affordable and mixed-use income communities in revitalizing parts of town and utilize tax credits to do this. And I know that they work across many states and are even expanding. So Evan and his team are doing phenomenal work. And Evan, by the way, I mentioned he's dynamic, right? He is also the host of the top-rated business and real estate podcast called Monumental. And his mission is to become a catalyst in the lives of others, helping them set and reach monumental goals. So if that doesn't get you excited and inspired, I don't really know what's going on with you, but it certainly does for me. So Evan, tell me a little bit about, we all have our bios, right? And it kind of helps people at least understand us from a high level. But if you can fill in the gaps here, like what are we missing? Who really is Evan behind the bio? And also, if you can just give us maybe a little bit of an elevator pitch beyond that.
Yeah, I love it, man. That's a big question. So a little bit about me. So I really got into real estate kind of at a young age, kind of by accident. I think it all was built around wanting to help other people. So I was actually in college going into the pre-med route where you and I were going to school at University of Louisville. And I realized quickly I hated science, I hated chemistry, I hated math. It was like all these things that didn't add up. And then, so finally I saw this humongous development on campus, $55 million. I was like, you know what, that is me. That is screaming my name. I don't know what it is, but I want to be a part of it. And so I found the owner, and I basically convinced him by getting a bunch of people to show up to the groundbreaking to give me a job and learn everything from him about development, about leasing, about retail, about tax credits. I just learned so much from that first property. I was like 19 years old at the time and really didn't know what I loved about it, but I just loved that it was like, this is a big project. It's making a big difference in the community. It's going to completely change the direction of this, the whole campus, the whole community around it. I was like, I want to be a part of things that really change the direction of the future of a neighborhood, and also for the people living there in the community around it that it's serving. Like that just got me pumped up. So from a very early age, I knew I wanted to get into real estate from that project, but really like learning my path throughout real estate along the way, and starting my own company in college with a modular development company, and then taking that and scaling that into working with LDG development now and doing workforce housing, mixed income housing, market rate housing, and being able to like literally change direction of a neighborhood. So that's a little bit of my background, but then also really like my why is all centered on helping other people and helping massive amounts of people and just making sure they have a better life, and being able to like almost verbatim what you said as the intro to Elevate is that aligns so perfectly with me, because it's like my mission is to not only create real estate for good, but also creating the financial freedom for others through real estate, through our investors and through others that I'm helping get into multifamily investing. And then also it's being able to serve the families that are living at our communities, being able to empower them with financial education, with mindset, with motivation. Like that all aligns with my why of why am I in real estate? Why do I do what I do? Why do I care so much? It's because I feel like I have, a purpose to help other people, and real estate is my vehicle to help others.
So what I heard from you so many times in that is like the basis of what you found is that at first you wanted to help people, and you were thinking, you know what, the best way to do that is being involved as a medical professional, right? And then you started to realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not a huge fan of this science and some of maybe the classwork that you had to go through to get there. And you started to become inspired with some other avenues that allowed you to make a big impact, right? So what other, one or two, or could you say there was a moment, or was it the inspiration of seeing that project that really caused you to say, you know what, this is my avenue to make a big impact? Or were there some other things in your life that really gave you that internal inspiration? Maybe there was a moment in your life where you truly just drew a line in the sand and said, I'm not going to be ordinary. I'm going to be uncommon. What was that? Or maybe was there a process that got you to that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it was kind of a culmination of things. I think my parents really empowered me and helped me believe in myself at a young age and believe that I could accomplish whatever I put my mind to. I think having mentors like my parents in my life really opened up my mindset to making sure I knew that anything was possible. So I think that was the start of it. But really, for me, getting into real estate was the first phase. But then the second phase of my growth into where I am now is that, in creating our company in college, this modular development company, we were trying to look at, okay, what demographics, what kind of people are we going to help create housing for with our modular development company? Where are we going to target in the market? And so we did a lot of research. We were very new to residential development. We're like, you know what? There is a big, big need for workforce and affordable housing. And we did a lot of research into it. And we actually we basically created this board of directors. So we had the director of the housing authority in Louisville. We had an affordable developer, and we also had an affordable housing nonprofit, Family Scholar House there in Louisville, right on University of Louisville's campus. And just from learning about every aspect of the need for housing and how fundamental that is for a family's well-being and also the future of their family, like their kids. If you think about families that are moving every 3 to 6 months because they can't have a stable home, they can't afford a stable home, or they can't afford to pay rent, that just has a detrimental effect to these kids and both their development and their education and their psychology. They're literally being hampered by this. So that's what really got me hooked on affordable workforce housing. I was like, man, we can really make an impact on people if we just provide them good quality and affordable housing all together. And that creates a foundation for everything else. Then they can have time to read books and educate themselves and spend more money on food instead of having to pay it all towards rent. So that's just really what got me, excited about it, energized, pumped up about, aligning my enjoyment of real estate with my passion for helping people and being able to do both at the same time.
That's awesome, man. I love surrounding myself with people like yourself who are truly good at heart, and they do business not only to make a profit, but they're interested in helping others. And I think that's a new wave of business really in the world, is to be focused on people over profit. And I think it's such a key for our listeners to realize that, while you're investing in real estate, while you're developing yourself, and while you're, developing others around you, maybe they're on your inner circle, maybe they're your own board of directors, but you've also got to be thinking about others who may need some help as well. And so I love that. And I appreciate your good-natured heart, just because it seems like that was something that just was inherently within you. Growing up. And obviously another thing that I really took out of that was, we as Elevate Nation, we have got to be thinking about how we're making an impact on other people. because as we're leading our own lives, we're also influencing other people, whether we're parents or whether we're, friends and family or what have you. But I love the fact that you mentioned how your parents always empowered you and they were always mentors in your life. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. And so if let's fast forward a little bit. We're going to fast forward really towards, kind of what's going on today. I mean, what's an example? One of the things that we talk about with Elevate Nation all the time is we're consistently and persistently raising that bar, because we're like, it's like what Ed Milet says, we are blissfully dissatisfied. We're happy. We're living a great life, but we're always consistently raising that bar. So what have you been doing recently, maybe in the past 6 months or a year, that you've been consistently, because I know for sure you have been doing this, you've been raising the bar massively. So tell our listeners, what have you been doing on a consistent basis that's really up your game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, the biggest thing has just been, I think one of the catalysts over the last few months, and you and I have talked about this, is like, having a coach in my corner has been a game changer. And I've literally, I went from, and I think it started with my girlfriend and I starting to date about 5 years ago. And she is a life and business coach. And at first I was like, oh, I'm successful. I'm a go-getter. I don't need a coach. I can coach myself. And the more and more it hit me, I was like, you know what? Like, everybody I know that's successful and that's where I want to be has a coach, guiding them, leading them. And the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I mean, the, Olympians, like NFL players, like all these sports teams, like they have coaches. So why the heck don't I have a coach? And so through talking with you and talking with others, it's like, I was like, yeah, I need a coach. So started working with Trevor a few months ago, and that has been a game changer for me, because it's just made me, I think the biggest, most altering thing about having a coach is they help you focus on your why. So I got 100% clear on my why. Like, I know my why backwards and forwards now. And that has propelled me to be able to focus, like double down. Like, I thought I was focused before, but I feel like I've just 10x'd my focus, my clarity, and where I put my time. Because now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work on, like, every single minute of the day. I want to have planned out in some form or fashion, working towards my goals, or utilizing my energy towards, helping others and moving the needle forward. So it's like, I've just doubled down on everything I've been doing. Really, the last 6 to 12 months, I've just been pushing for, creating more content on the podcast, lining up more deals on the new construction side, finding more partners and investors to work with, really just trying to create something that aligns with my big why and helping more people. So I think that's been the biggest thing, is clarity on my why. And then the second thing is making sure I'm actually setting aside time to get the things done that I want to get done, and also sacrificing. Like, there's a lot of times, you and I have talked, it's like weekends are a lot of times devoted toward the podcast, or devoted towards driving deals, or devoted towards, coordinating with people and pushing projects forward. Like, there's a lot of times I'm working the majority of the weekend. I'll take a few hours off, enjoy it with Jeanette or enjoy it with friends. But there's a lot of times where I'm just like, I can't stop, because I know what my why is, and I'm focused on it. And I just want it so bad.
You inspire me so much, because you're so purpose driven, which is like, it oozes out of your soul. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think it's such a great thing for us to all continue to remind ourselves, is what is our why? What's that big why? And continue to ask yourself that on a consistent basis, right? And it's so great to have somebody in your corner who can not only be a lamppost, but someone who's, can help you sort of strategize through exactly what is that and how can you chunk that down into your daily process, right? And having a coach is something that has definitely set my business apart as well. And being a coach is also such a fulfilling process. And it is for both of our coach. So tell me, one thing that you mentioned there was, what you've been, you've had to sacrifice a lot to be where you are and to continue to work towards where you're going. So tell me about, some of the things that maybe you've had to say no to, and what are you getting better at saying no to, as well as some other, examples that really can be a great reference for most of Elevate Nation, because we all know that there's 168 hours in the week, but we know that if we're going to get where we want to go, we have to say no, and we also have to sacrifice. So give me a few, maybe a couple examples of what you've been getting better at saying no at, as well as some things that you've had to sacrifice specifically.
Yeah. I love this question because I feel like people, the Elevate Nation should see like a little bit behind the curtain of, what is it like? What is it like to sacrifice? And so, just to put things in perspective. So, like right now, Jeanette and I, my girlfriend, we share a car. So that takes significant amount of coordination between the two of us. So we share a car. We live in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment here in Nashville. We don't go on vacation almost ever. And the reason I bring this all up is just because it's like we're not only sacrificing our time, but we're also sacrificing our money in sacrificing or delaying certain satisfactions. So that way we can be investing in coaching. So that way we can be investing in conferences. Like most of my free money goes into real estate or education. That's where my money goes. And that's where like I know that it's going to pay off tenfold. It already has paid off tenfold. And I'm just basically taking those reinvestments and putting them back into more real estate, because I know the compound effect of real estate. And I know that, this is all part of my journey in creating a bigger impact. So it's like sacrificing our lifestyle and also sacrificing our time. It's like there's been a lot of times where, I've had friends go to Vegas and I really wanted to join. I hadn't seen these friends in a while. And I was like, you know what? Like that's going to take away from my time that I have set aside for my business. But I think there is a balancing act in that. I'm not saying to just work 24/7. Like there's definitely times where on the weekends, like you've probably seen it, going hiking with Jeanette, and we're starting to invite other people to go hiking with us. So we're not only getting out in nature, but we're getting time away from the business, away from the phone, and just enjoying and relaxing and kind of meditating out there. So I think it's a balancing act, but I definitely think that it takes sacrifice in that kind of growing phase. And there is a point too where you can mix your pleasure and your business too. Like that's something you and I have talked about, is like masterminding and going on retreats and maybe going to a cabin in the Rocky Mountains and having a group of like 5 or 10 couples and everybody goes for a long weekend. That way you can get out in nature, you can enjoy, you can escape, you vacation, and you're masterminding and you're pushing the needle further on your business.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is too, like you are sacrificing for your purpose. So it all goes back to that. I mean, I know for sure because I know you, but that really is something that has to come through the listeners as well. As, you guys share a car and you live in perhaps a smaller apartment, and you don't really take a ton of vacations because you're focused on the purpose. And I think if you have that mentality, it's not hard to do those things, and it's all about building a life of greatness. If you're satisfied with the ordinary, then sure. I mean, go ahead and take your vacations whenever you want. And, of course there's a time and place for relaxation and, what I call lying in the mud, as a rhinoceros has to lie in the mud a little bit to recharge the batteries, so to speak. And so, I think there is certainly a balance there, which you've just eloquently discussed. But, tell me a little bit about, as you're handling so many things in your life and your business. I mean, you're such a dynamic person, to be able to be successful in so many different things. Obviously, you've got to be intentional with your habits. So tell me about, a couple habits that you've been able to structure within your own life that has created a lot of success for you.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing for me has been my morning routine. And honestly, probably the number one thing I would say out of that morning routine has been meditating. That over the last, I think it's been almost 3 years now, that I've been meditating and using mainly Headspace to help me curate those meditations. And it's been a game changer for me because it clears my head and it makes me think about nothing but what is going on in the present time in the moment, and almost trying to just release any thought from my mind. And it's a lot of times it's impossible to do that, but you're always going to have thoughts rolling around. But the point is to just be able to let go of the thoughts and not think of another thought, and just be right there, sitting quiet and enjoying the moment. And that's allowed me to so much lower my stress levels. Cause I used to we work on 45, $50 million deals. And there's sometimes like if I miss a date or a deadline, or if I screw up a number or whatever it is, like little changes can completely screw up a whole project, or slow down or stop, or be a huge detriment to the project. So I literally, like a couple years ago, I literally woke up like multiple times in the middle of the night, like sweating. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is weird. Like, why am I so stressed? Like, I was having nightmares about projects going bad. Like, that's crazy. That should never happen. That should never happen to anybody. But it really wasn't until meditating where I was just able to calm down, like realize that I'm overthinking things, and realize that as long as I do everything by the books, as long as I'm careful with my work and I do things well, then everything will be all right. And if something does come up, it comes up and we deal with it. So it's just having that mentality of like, as long as you do your best and push for the best, and you surround yourself with the best, then things will work themselves out. And that with meditation has helped me just so much clear my head and not worry as much. I'm way less stressed than I ever was before. And I just try to keep this level state and not get too excited, not get too nervous, not, just keep myself level. And I think that's been so important. So that number one habit has been by far a big one that I advocate for anyone I talk to.
I love that. And, I love this quote by Mark Twain, and I'll probably butcher this, but he says, I'm an old man who's known many worries throughout my life that never happened or never occurred. And that's the other thing too, is that yes, your mind is certainly looking for problems to solve constantly. And so you have to, once you become one with that thought and you learn to allow that saboteur to just kind of take a back seat and not let it be driving the bus, it's such an amazing transformation. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And the other thing that you mentioned there, which is a concept that I learned about a few years ago called equanimity. You never really let yourself get too low or too high. And when things come, you expect the unexpected. And the other thing that I love that you talked about was your morning routine. Another thing that I noticed from so many of our, mentors or people that we really respect is that they bulletproof their own soul through what they do in their mornings. And, I think a book that you and I both love is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And really, there's a strategy behind this. And it's so much fun to see how that compounds over such a, period of time, over consistent and persistent. And that's what Elevate is all about. So, so tell me, with that thought in mind, who are your role models? I mean, who do you model? Because success leaves clues, right? Who do you model yourself after?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, Robin Sharma is one of them. So I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah, it's really it's people like Robin Sharma. Richard Branson is another one, because I love how Richard Branson literally created multiple avenues of businesses that are all, basically he sets them up and then they're self-running after that point. And then afterwards, they're all aligned in the same mission of just creating a better experience for people. So I highly admire Richard Branson. Grant Cardone, obviously, he's a huge role model for me as far as real estate, negotiating, creating that Cardone empire. And then people like Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she is just a boss lady. She has created a whole empire and created her name as just one that resonates with helping people and serving a higher purpose. And that's exactly the kind of, mentality I want to have in helping others. And then even people like Mahatma Gandhi, that guy was amazing, way ahead of his time and leading this charge of people just by, being nonviolent. And it was funny. My mom, back when I was 9 or 10 years old, they to encourage us to read more. She would basically say, if you do a book report on whatever book you choose, then we'll go to the water park. And so I picked Mahatma Gandhi and did a whole book report like when I was 9 years old. So ever since then, I've just like been obsessed with Mahatma Gandhi and just his ability to basically create a crowd movement and get the freedom of India through it. So it's just people like that are able to like massively change the direction of the universe. I think it's just those people are powerful, and that's the kind of people I admire.
Well, and you are the type of guy that is a role model yourself. So I think it's such a great, nugget for our listeners to realize is that not only do you have access to so many of the people that Evan just talked about, we can all read a book, that maybe Mahatma Gandhi wrote himself or, was written about him, his biography, or any of these other great people, whether it's Oprah or Richard Branson. I mean, there's so many others that you can access as a role model. Not only someone that you may or may not know, but someone that you look up to, in addition to becoming that role model yourself. And also, I think it's great to have role models that are directly within your own life. And it really reminds me of, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The beautiful thing about our society today is that we can spend time with people who may not be in direct proximity to each other. Like you and I, we're not in the same city right now. We both have coaches that are not even in the same country as us right now. And so it's such an amazing resource that we all have. We've got to take advantage of this time and elevate our lives. So, with that, tell me about some investments that you've made in yourself recently. I know you mentioned coaching. What other, you mentioned that you go to a lot of conferences and educational events. Is there any really kind of maybe unexpected investment that's paid off massively for you recently?
That's a great question. I would say this may be like a not your typical answer, but I would say investing in VAs has been huge for the podcast. And the reason why this is such an amazing investment is because it clears up my calendar. Even if it's just a few hours a week that I don't have to put into the podcast, that's huge because now that takes away the deadline, that takes away the stress of thinking about the podcast, like all that. You work on it for an hour, but you think about it for 2 hours. Your mind's always churning. So just not having to think about my podcast behind the scenes as much has been a huge help for me. And it really hasn't been that significant of an investment. I'd say that is one. And then, I would just say any real estate conference, we both did Joe Fairless's Best Ever. That was huge. I'm still following up and connecting with people and creating great friends from that. And then also another one that I think is huge is I just started a meetup. So I was like thinking about it. I was like, I travel a lot. Should I create a meetup? I was like, you know what? Just click the buy button. So I bought the meetup, and so next month we're gonna have our first meetup here in Nashville, a multifamily meetup, and we're gonna have Jake from Jake and Gino come and speak. So really excited about that. But that's something where I was like, you know what? Like, don't think about it, just do it and invest and create something that is going to bring value to other people.
That's so cool. So a couple of things there. You mentioned you've invested in VAs, which I know a lot of our listeners are going to be intrigued about, but I love the thought around, I heard this recently. It was like, when you have anything on your plate, you can either do it, you can delegate it, you can delay it, or you can dump it, And so there's always that decision-making process with any project. And there's a lot of tasks that we have on our plate that may or may not be at our, value range, right? And there's always someone who's looking for an opportunity. So I think, I had this hesitation for a long time to outsource a lot of my work. So I love to see that you are outsourcing work and you're optimizing your own time in different ways. And I love the fact that you just said, you know what, let's just do it. I don't know what's going to happen in this meetup, but let's just go ahead and go after it. Because that's the other thing too, is like you have to take a leap of faith. I mean, a lot of the things that we do at first, we're not the expert at it. We have to build that expertise, and that only comes through stepping out of your comfort zone. So I love that. And, the other thing too, is like, we learn in our neural pathways from success, right? But we also learn maybe what not to do from failures. So what sort of failures have you had, that you can speak to, maybe that's happened to you in your past that has at one time felt like hugely detrimental, but then has set you up for later success?
I would say one of the biggest ones is I applied for a Fulbright scholarship coming out of college, and I was so dead set on getting that. Like, I had my heart poured into that application. Like, I wanted that so bad, and I was going to do sustainable real estate development and study at a university in Sweden. And I was so pumped about it, but I ended up not getting it. I ended up getting waitlisted and didn't end up making it. And in the moment, I was so bummed, but come to see how things turned out, it turned out pretty well for me. And, in the end, I ended up meeting my girlfriend because I stayed in the US, and I ended up being able to create over 1,000 units of workforce and affordable housing. So I think that, in the moment I was so bummed out, but come to see how things turn out is like, I got to, learn from the leaders at LDG, and they had, combined probably 100 years experience in real estate. And I got to basically just soak in so much knowledge from these guys that have done thousands of units. And now I've been able to do over 1,000 units. So being able to basically take that, like, straight out of college, like what I thought was such a bummer, and turn that into, living what I now see as my purposeful life has been a huge win in the end.
Well, it's like what Tony Robbins says, is life happens for you and not to you, And I think that's a great reminder, because we all face setbacks, and there's so many things that in the moment it feels like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this didn't happen for me. But it takes time for that to, metastasize in your life, to show you that, that's happening for a reason. And if you knew the whole story right now, you'd get impatient. But it's a journey, it's an adventure. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And tell me one thing along the lines of, when you're achieving goals, I mean, you're going to have setbacks like we were just talking about. So what are some goals that you're persistently and consistently raising the bar to reach right now? Tell me, one or two maybe really inspiring goals that you're chasing right now.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest ones is trying to close another 300 units by the end of the year. And then really just trying to push the needle on closing more deals and setting up systems to, like we said, like, outsource and empower other people. Because that's something that I've realized is, like, as much as I desire to control things, and as much as I it's kind of one of those, like, if I do it, it'll get done type of mentality. I've had to let go of that, because I'm realizing, I'm like, the quicker I let go of a task and empower somebody else to do it themselves and teach them the right way to do it from the beginning, the quicker I can move on to bigger goals and bigger targets. So that's been something I've really been trying to work on, is hiring and building out that team to be able to support me, so I can work on my, my zone of genius, and work on my like top one or two things that I'm the best at. And I know, like, I can do that better than almost anybody else. And that's where I need to be focusing. And some of this, this light green time, as we call it, this time that helps, but it doesn't really move the needle too much as far as making a big difference toward my goals. That's what I'm striving to surround my team with. So that's one goal. And then the other goal that I'm really striving for right now is trying to get the podcast in the top 5 business podcasts. So really trying to push the needle. And the way that the two things that I've done to really help make that happen is, one, try to put out more content. So we went from 1 episode a week to 3 episodes a week. And on top of that, getting bigger name guests and just pushing the needle every week as far as the level of guests that we're getting on. So we recently had on David Meltzer. We recently had on Elena Cardone, and really just trying to push that even higher and higher, and get some of the people that are already in the top 5, in the top 10 on the podcast, and get them on the podcast on Monumental, so I can share their story and thus elevate Monumental See what I did there? I love it.
Absolutely. I love it, man. If you haven't checked out Monumental, you have got to go do that right now. Check them out on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you can listen to podcasts. It is a phenomenal show. I was blessed to be on the show, last year, and it was a lot of fun.
And Tyler was he was one of our most listened to episodes. So shout out to Tyler for that.
I appreciate that. One thing I loved about what you told me about your goals there is that you broke them out. I think you did this inherently, but you broke them out into subcategory goals, because you've got, all right, hey, look, I want to acquire, 300. We want to develop 300 more units by the end of this year. And here's exactly how. We're going to outsource certain tasks. I'm going to work in my zone of genius, which requires so much awareness. I think that is something that would come from a consistent practice of meditation and, output through journaling and just listening to yourself. That's amazing. And also, you're talking about becoming a top 5 business podcast. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of shows out there, and that is that is a monumental goal if there was one. And, you broke it out to say, look, here's exactly what we're doing. So I think it's a great thing for the listeners to remember is that, look, if you've got a goal, you have got to get specific on how you're going to get there and what kind of actions are you going to take on a consistent basis to raise that bar to get to that point. And also think big. I mean, my gosh, look at Evan's thinking big, and I know for sure he's got many other goals, and I appreciate you letting us look behind the curtain, as you mentioned earlier there. So from that, we're going to move into our sort of rapid fire section here. And what we call it is the rare air questionnaire. And the reason why we call it that is because if you're going to consistently elevate your life, you're going to get to that point, that spot on the mountain where the air is rare. There's not many people who make it there. It's tough. Your legs are tired. Things are happening to where it causes you want to stop, But when you get there, I think that this is really where the best of the best are, and they separate themselves. So this is where we want to dive into our rapid fire. And so first question I have for you is, what is the most impactful book you have ever read and why?
Oh, man. I think the two that come to mind, I'm going to break the rules and give 2 books.
Boom.
Think and Grow Rich and 10X Rule. Those 2 books and they're books that I give out to people all the time. I have 10 copies of both of those books, and even a few other books that I consistently just give out because I feel like that's the best gift you can give somebody. But Think and Grow Rich, it just when I read it, I actually was gifted it by my aunt and uncle, and it took me 3 years after I got gifted it to actually read it. And I just think back, I'm like, man, if I would have read that 3 years ago, I could have gotten started on this 3 years ago. But the point is, it's such a powerful book because it opens you up to the mindset of, hey, I can attract things to my life, and if I work consistently, persistently in the same direction over time, my goals are going to be fulfilled. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy if you can put in the energy to moving the needle in that direction. So that was a huge eye-opener for me. And then 10X Rule, kind of the same thing. It's just saying consistent, persistent action and doing way more than you even thought was possible. It just breaks down limiting beliefs, and it just shows you that all of your limiting beliefs are even your limiting beliefs have limiting beliefs. It's crazy. It's even once you say, oh, I can do bigger than that, it's well, take that and go even bigger than that. It's it helps you think at a whole nother level. So that's really that's helped me just make monumental goals because I was oh, I can do bigger than that. I just need to take more action. That's all. If I put in the time and the energy and the effort, then I can fulfill a bigger goal. So those 2 books, highly recommend.
That's awesome. And I love how both of those books complement each other because it's the planting the seeds in your own mind. And if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, you have got to go get that book immediately. It is a game changer. And you're planting those seeds, you're setting a course of action towards attaining exactly what you want, but then also combining that with thinking 10 times bigger. Because the thing is, a lot of our minds are, we're conditioned based on our own environment, right? And it's what we see is what we believe is possible. But if you start to stretch your mind and you also follow the process that Napoleon Hill talks about, you want to talk about elevating your life. That is exactly is exactly the process. So I love that. So what's the biggest life? I know that you talked about a couple of things earlier in terms of your own habits, but outside of meditation and your morning routine, what's the biggest way you elevate your own life on a daily basis?
That's a good question. The way I elevate my life on a daily basis, I would say just making sure that I'm getting 2 to 3 things done every day that I really want to get done that day. And it's not a win every day. It's kind of like what Andy Frisella says is like, you get your hit list done, and you make sure you get that done before anything else. And that, I think that focus, really, really honing in on that. Whenever I do get that list done, my day just feels so much better. And then anything I get done on top of that is just gravy. It's like, oh, well, not only did I get my top goals done, but I really moved the needle on 3 other things. And so I think that's just a huge day, or huge thing. And then the other thing too is, and something our coach has helped me on is really planning out my day by blocking out time, like we talked about earlier, like scheduling time for certain things that I want to get done. Because I've just noticed if I don't have it in my schedule, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to spend, conscious, concerted, like energy focused on getting that task done or that goal done. So I think those 2 things, creating, a top 3 and then scheduling out time to get those top 3 done, has been really helped me elevate my game.
Yeah, and along the lines of what you were just describing, Andy Frisella talks about the power list, and it's about, accomplishing 5, key tasks that are going to move you closer towards your goals, right? And it's all about winning the day. If you can win the day, you can win, a couple of days in a row, then you create some momentum. If you win a week, then you've created even more momentum, which then is going to give you more likely to win the next week and that month and then that quarter and that year. Next thing you know, you've won a decade and you've really elevated your results in a monumental way. You see what I did there?
Yes.
So how do you, you have talked about some other things that are really inspiring because you're such a purpose-driven person. Tell me, other than, what you're doing as far as developing affordable housing, and you're helping so many families there, get a leg up in society. What else do you do to elevate others around you?
I would say there's a few things I do, but one of the things that I've done recently is twofold. So I used to be involved back when I lived in Louisville. Used to be involved with a group that helped high school and middle school kids start businesses. It was somewhat like junior achievement, but a little different in that we would actually help them. They would legitimately start this business and get it up and running, and then would have a whole pitch competition at the end. And so there were kids that I would coach through this program. By the end of it, it's just, you see their confidence change, you see their mindset change. They're like, oh, I can really have something running that is all my own, and I'm only 14 years old. That's hugely powerful, and also like completely changes their mindset at a young age to say, hey, I can achieve anything, I can do anything. So that's been phenomenal. That's been a lot of fun for me. So that was one thing that I had done in Louisville. The other thing too is just helping people right now, both get into their first multifamily investment. Been helping friends and different people along their journey, and then also helping people with their podcast. That's something I've realized. I didn't even realize that. I was like, oh, I guess I do know quite a bit about podcasting now that I've done it for a year, and just trying to help other people on their journey. Because I think podcasting is like hands down one of the best ways to create, your thought leadership platform, get your name out there, and also connect and grow. Like, the episode that I just put out recently, it's like, you can grow so much, and you can also help other people grow, and you can connect with people that you would never be able to connect with just by being a podcast host.
Absolutely. And it's been a lot of fun. And I want to thank you on the airwaves here for helping me get this show up and started. So if anybody else who's listening is interested in Evan's help on any of what he just mentioned, you have the opportunity of reaching out to him. And he also has a special offer, and we can also share contact details in terms of where you can follow him and where you can find him online. So if you want to share that to the listeners.
Yeah, sure. So if listeners are interested in getting help, either diving into how they can get into multifamily investing, or like we said, like starting a podcast, I love helping people in both those spaces, both getting into real estate because it leads to financial freedom. And then the biggest thing is like investing in real estate for financial freedom leads to allowing you to unlock so much time that you can then put back and help other people. So it's like real estate for impact. So that I'm just really passionate about that, and passionate about podcasting and helping people get that started.
Absolutely. So Evan is offering a free 45-minute call to any of our Elevate listeners. If you would like to take advantage of that, I highly would recommend that. And where can we find you on social media?
Yes. So everything is at Evan Holladay, spelled EvanHolladay. I'm highly active on Instagram. So check me out there. Send me a DM. Let's connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evan is a great soul. He is somebody who leads with a giving heart, which I always appreciate. And so I really appreciate you being on the show today. And, the biggest thing here for Elevate Nation is to remember that repetition is key. What we talked about today, implement that into your own life and take massive action on what you learned. Not only that, but listen to the show again, take notes. I mean, this is a master class because we've got a master, who's joined us here. So, Evan, I want to thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.